Welcome back, guys. It's craft time. In today's video, we're going to be taking some styrofoam pumpkins from the Dollar Tree and turning them into cute, on-trend pumpkin stacks. Let's go ahead and get started. To begin, we're just going to cut off the tags and remove any stickers that might be in the way and get a clean slate. Then we're going to remove the stems. You can use these or find an alternative for a stem. I found some sticks from my backyard that I plan on using in place. So I am removing all of the stems from the top. They're pretty easy to do, just wiggle it. It's just a piece of styrofoam connected to a toothpick, so you shouldn't have any trouble getting them out. Once you're done with those, you can just set them aside. And then we are going to paint our pumpkins. You can do this with whatever colors you want and whatever type of paint. I have chalk paint and that's what I'm going to be using today, but you can use acrylic paint as well. I also have myself a dowel rod and some Spanish moss because that's what I'm going to be using for my decor once the stacks are put together. For the chalk paint, I'm going to be using white. I'm going to make a light orange color. I'm going to be using my gray from Folk Art, but I am going to lighten it up just a bit, and then my sage from Folk Art as well. It's this really pretty green that I really like and have used in multiple projects. You're going to want to paint the entire pumpkin. I did 2 full coats on mine. And I tried to make sure that I got into all of those grooves of the styrofoam because they do kind of have those like bumpy, airy holes to them. So I just used the paint to kind of fill those in the best that I can. And you don't have to worry too much about the tops and the bottom of the pumpkin, except for whichever color you plan to use as your top pumpkin. So make sure that the sides are filled in really good, and then the top of whatever pumpkin's going to be the top of your stack, and you can kind of go from there. The dry time is what takes the longest in this project. You can use a hair dryer or a heat gun to kind of help you out. Just make sure that you don't have it on too high of heat because you don't want to melt your styrofoam. Once it's dry, you are going to need to seal it if you are also using a chalk paint. Acrylic paint may not need it. I usually seal my projects regardless. So for these smaller pumpkins that I'm using, I'm going to seal it with my clear wax that I have. But for the larger pumpkins, because there's so much surface area and I have so many, it's a lot cheaper for me to seal it with Mod Podge, so that's what I'm going to use on those. So for my wax, I just wipe it on and then wipe it back off. And then for the Mod Podge, you just paint it on and you wait until it's nice and dry, and it will just kind of seal the paint in, but also take away the chalky feel and just make it look a little nicer. To put the pumpkins together, I have this dowel rod that I'm going to measure down and just cut. I'm using some thick wire cutters, but you could probably get away with scoring it with scissors and just breaking it, or even just a small saw. So I'm going to get this down to size, and then I'm going to use the back of my paintbrush to kind of push a hole into my pumpkins as kind of a guide. That way, whenever I push through, I don't accidentally break the pumpkin or make too big of a hole by trying to force it. So I put my dowel rod in, my first pumpkin for the bottom, and then I'm going to choose the pumpkin that I want on top of that one. I'm going to pre-do my holes, and then I'm going to slide it down the dowel rod. But before I connect the two together, I'm going to put a ring of hot glue around. That way I can set the pumpkin down on top, and not only does it have the sturdiness of the dowel rod to help keep it up straight, but it's also connected with the hot glue. That way we know that it will not come apart. Now I also took a bead of hot glue and put it around where the dowel rod comes through the pumpkin. That way it has a little bit of stability too, and that the pumpkins can't just slide up and down the dowel rod. Then I'm going to repeat this process for the next pumpkin. Again, I'm going to pre-puncture holes, slide it down on the dowel rod, put my hot glue on, and then slide the pumpkins down to where they're touching, and then, holding them together until it dries. And then for one stack I have 3 pumpkins, and one I have 4, so for the other one I'm going to do the same process for the 4th. Now, for your top pumpkin, you want to make sure your dowel rod is not too tall. You only want it to go about halfway into your pumpkin. You do not want it sticking out of the top. So just make sure that you cut that down before applying your last pumpkin. Like I said, I had pulled some sticks from my backyard, and I'm going to be using those as my stems. You can use that. You could use wine corks. You could reuse the stems that it came with just by painting those and making them look a little nicer. Kind of whatever you have on hand is what will work best, so don't stress out about it. Use what you have. I cut a bigger hole in the top of my pumpkin, and then I kind of pushed the stem in just to see how far in I wanted it to go, what it looked like, which direction I wanted to angle it. Then I pulled it back out, covered it with hot glue, and put it back in. That way I don't have to worry about it sliding out, or if somebody tries to pick it up from the stem, it won't slip out and it won't be moving around. Once that is nice and dry, I am going to use the Spanish moss to decorate. Now, you don't have to use this. People use very pretty florals, all kinds of different things. And instead of a stem, you could even, cut a little bit of a bigger hole and do like a bouquet at the top. That would be really pretty. I wanted to kind of make this more natural. I'm thinking more like hayride vibes, so I'm just going to use the Spanish moss to embellish it and kind of hide the imperfections of the seams. I am not going to wrap it all the way around the seams. I'm just going to put it where I think it looks best and kind of balance it out from there. So I'm just going to wrap it all the way around the stem, and then in between each pumpkin I'm going to do 2 different sets of the moss, one on one side and one on the other, and then as I move down I'm going to kind of offset that for the next pumpkin. So very easy to do. Be careful, the hot glue can burn your fingers. You can see that I have these silicone thimbles. I also got those from Dollar Tree. They are a lifesaver. They're amazing. I highly suggest them. But if you don't have them, you can use the back of a paintbrush to help push the moss in. That way you're not chancing burning yourself. Once you have that in place, I did add some greenery to the top of the pumpkin just to add one, bit of elevation. You could do a ribbon or a bow. You could do twine, whatever you want. This is what I thought looked best and what I wanted to go with, and that is it. After it's all dry, it's such a simple project, and I hope you really enjoyed doing it. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you're new here, consider subscribing to my channel. I'm so thankful for all of the support that I've received from you guys. I hope that you enjoy this project, and I will take you in for a closer look.